Aloha, everyone. I know that was a crazy turn because we had such a short time window between the meeting and coming back for this dynamic program that we're going to enjoy. But I thank you for your patience, and I certainly want to thank the Brock Circle Committee, Sharon Olson and Ann Stratty, and Margaret Hopple-Perry and Patricia Erd for their help, and also want to thank Mary Moore who jumped in, and also Stacy Ziegler who helped us in setting up for this. Our program today really needs no introduction, but I do want to tell you it is sponsored by the Brock Circle. The Brock Circle was started in 2012 by the LDEI board as a way to enhance conference and also to meet strategic needs for the organization going forward. And certainly what we have today is an absolute pleasure and enhancement by having Carla Hall with us. And Carla really needs no introductions because she is one of us, and that's what makes it so special. Her resume is incredible, from the time that she has spent on ABC's Emmy award-winning lifestyle show, The Chew, to ABC's popular GMA Today, to the way she wowed audiences on Bravo's Top Chef. Amazing background and much more that she's going to be sharing with you today about what she's doing today and about adversity, something that we all face in our life, whether it's personal or professional, and how we are resilient and bouncing forward and moving on in what we're doing. Carla, though, what makes really special and very fitting for this conference is her roots are firmly planted here in Nashville. And for our Rhythm and Roots conference, how much more appropriate it is that we have her here with us today. And of course, our beloved Carol Brock, who's just come to sit in the front, who our Brock Circle is named after. And we're so happy that you're sitting right up front here with us, because that means very much to have you in the room with us. We're going to spend this very brief time with Carla getting inspired, getting motivated, and encouraged. So I want to ask you to join me in giving a warm aloha to Carla Hall.
Well, thank you. Hi. It's so great. First of all, thank you all for being so flexible and changing the time. Hi, Carol. For changing the time, I was working in London and talking to Ann Stratty all along the way and trying to figure out what we're going to do. I'm like, I have a job, and because I don't really have a job, I need to keep that job. But it's so great to be in a room where people actually know my name. And I know that sounds weird because so often I go places, and ever since Blackish got really popular, and it's won all of those Emmy Awards, they're like, Tracy Ellis Ross, and I'm like, I'm not her. I'm either Tracy Ellis Ross or the girl on the thing. And when I was on the flight coming here, the flight attendant says to me, do you know who you look like? And I said, yes, Tracy Ellis Ross. She's like, yeah, and do you know who else you look like? And I'm thinking, okay, Effie Berry, who was Marion Barry's wife, or Sister Sledge, or she's probably not thinking about that, or, so one of these other people, and I'm like, no, who? Well, that girl on the thing, that chef. And I said, Carla? She said, yes. I said, well, I'm Carla. She goes, oh, you are? So it is just so nice to be in a room where it's actually for me, because, when then people are incredulous, and then in thinking about this talk, I'm like, well, is that authenticity or adversity? So it's a little bit of both, because I'm authentically not Tracy Ellis Ross. But, I was thinking about how I was going to talk about, adversity and authenticity, and I have to go back a few years just to tell you about my background. I was painfully shy as a little child. I know a lot of people, and some of you know this story. I was painfully shy, and then I went to New York to my first play, which was Bubbling Brown Sugar, and I was in love with theater. And I came home, and I started doing all of these lines from the play. You know, there was this song called Nobody, and the guy would say, "Who wants to blah, 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 blah? Nobody." And I was doing that for a month, and my mother's like, "Carla, you can take out the trash." "Who wants to take out the trash?" "Nobody." You know, for a month, I was so stubborn. And my mother finally put me in acting classes, and I think that acting saved me from feeling bullied. And it was when people told me, "You were weird," I'm like, "Thank you." Because as far as theater was concerned, it was dare to be you, dare to be different. And being different was a good thing, and weirdos are different. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. You're giving me a compliment, you don't even know it, you know. So that's kind of how theater helped me, and I sort of did theater all along the way. So when I think about authenticity, I think, when do you know that you're being authentic? Right? So, I mean, is it when you feel comfortable in your skin? You know, that you feel authentic. And I think the older I get, the more that I feel that I'm being my authentic self, because inside I feel like I'm 80 years old and I can say whatever the hell I want. But then I realize, wait, I'm not 80 years old, and I probably can't say whatever the heck I want. Okay, I changed that word because I said hell, now I'm saying heck. And then you think, okay, so what is diversity? And diversity means difficulties and misfortune. All right, so I've had those. I'm like, I am qualified to do this talk. I've had some adversity. But so let me talk about I talked about, when I did theater, but let me talk about the last 11 years. And a lot of times, even though I did a show on television before I did Top Chef, I did a competition show called Food Fight. Top Chef was probably the first show where people got to know me. And the fact of the matter, the fact that I am words of affirmation, that's my love language, and I don't want to be judged. And I find myself on a show that's about being judged. And I thought the universe was playing a trick on me. And I'm like, okay, here I am. I mean, the whole premise is to judge your food. And so I'm on this show, and you couldn't have any books. And I said, well, at the time, I was reading Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth, Awaken to Your Life's Purpose. And I convinced them that that was like my Bible. If they were going to allow people to have a Bible, I wanted to have this book. And that was a book that I was reading it for the second time when I was on Top Chef. And I remember when I'm doing these challenges, and actually I'm so far away from from realizing that I'm here. The first challenge, I didn't even realize that it was a challenge. I was like, oh look, here's Padma and Gail Simmons and Tom Colicchio welcoming us. This is so nice. And they're like, okay, this is a challenge, because I didn't think that they had to pay for the production, like all the cameras and everything. I just thought they were welcoming us, but that wasn't that. And so I'm going through all of that, and I'm going through feeling like I am not worthy. And the imposter syndrome started. And at the time, I was 44 years old. And I'm looking at all of these young kids, and they're from all of these pedigreed restaurants, and I'm a caterer, and I'm 44. So I am, I think, 8 years older than the next person, and like 20 years older than some of these other people. Okay, so adversity. But I go through all of this, and I'm looking at people. I'm not being myself. I know I'm not being authentic, but I didn't know how, because I was feeling so insecure about my food that I couldn't get to my authentic nature. And I knew people liked my food, and I remember doing some kind of good stuff. And then I was just like, I would just do something that was more like somebody else's food until I got to mine. But then there was a point when I was standing at the judges' table, and it was at Restaurant Wars, and I'm standing there, and I knew I was going to go home because I was on the bottom, and I was just like, I just felt my heart beating. I mean, I really thought I was gonna like keel over. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. I don't want to go home. And I'm standing there and I'm shaking. And you know, the cameras love that when you feel like you're gonna fall over and keel over, because that's an authentic awesomeness for them in TV world. And I'm just really, really nervous. And I'm just like, I'm deep breathing. I'm thinking of Eckhart Tolle, breathe. And then I realized in that moment, nobody has ever died at the judges' table. And I went from to right? Nobody has ever died there, because what is the worst thing that can happen, right? And sometimes you have to ask yourself, what is the worst thing that can happen? And if it's death, then okay, because it's final. But then, I mean, so for me, that's when I started to be authentic with my food. As soon as I got the fear out of the way, as soon as I wasn't thinking of all the adversity and the judging and all of that, I actually started to do my food. And I started to think, you know what? I'm going to make food that I want to eat. I'm going to make food that I want to have when I come back. And I actually, in the competition, started making food. When I did that chicken pot pie, which was the second, All-Stars, I did the chicken pot pie because honestly, the food that they were feeding us in the hotel or in the apartment was nasty. I'm like, I'm going to do chicken pot pie because when I go home, I'm going to have a really tasty meal for myself. And then it ended up winning. I'm like, oh, hey. Okay. But there was another story in terms of adversity. Here I am on Top Chef, and I am... it's a team challenge, and you know how those go. Every time there's a team challenge, there's always the adversity of the other people on the team, and they're not thinking that you're good enough. At least that's how I felt. And it was for the U.S. Open Challenge, and we had to do a dish that was fit for an athlete. And we're all sitting around, and I remember that Mike Isabella was the captain, and Richard Blaze was on my team, and Marcel was on my team, Antonia, and Dale Talladie. These people are on my team. So I said, you know, I want to do a groundnut stew. And they were like, really? Have you ever been to the U.S. Open? That's not fancy enough. And I was thinking, and I remember just feeling like, I don't know what to do. I haven't been to the U.S. Open, so I don't know what that means. And the food, I just know that this dish, I feel, is fit for an athlete. I'm an athlete. I would love this dish, you know. And at the time, I was a runner, and so I thought that this would be the perfect dish to do. And they were just talking about me the whole time, and they were doing their dishes, and they were celebrating and high-fiving when they would make a suggestion, and I was like, okay, the groundnut stew didn't get any love, but I'd already committed to it. And you know, and when you're being creative, to start over sometimes takes more energy than just to do the thing that you had already planned to do. So I'm doing my groundnut stew, and then in the middle of making the stew, I'm looking up at the clock, and I cut my finger. I know. It felt like that, too. I mean, it was like the whole nail just sliced off. You know, just to give you a little, you know, physical, you know, just imagery. Imagery's good in this. Imagery's good. So, you know, but as a chef, I was like, okay. All right, and I was like, oh, man. Okay, so let me just clean that part off where the finger was. And then, you know, because I don't want that to be in the stew. And then, you know, so I go over to the medic, because there's a medic, and, you know, of course, they're catching all this on tape. And so I'm holding my finger, and it's up here, and he's like, do you want to go to the hospital? Okay, talk about adversity. And I'm like, no, I just want to finish cooking my food. And I said, I just need you to wrap it up so that I can get back to my dish. And so, like a couple of days before, another chef had cut her finger, and she did go to the hospital. But I'm like, no, I need to finish the stew that nobody wants, actually, on the team. So I get I have this big old bandage now, and I have my my little blue glove on, and so I get my prep done, and we get to the tennis courts, and then I'm there with everybody. We set up our little stations, and it goes like the tennis score. So one chef will go up against another person on head-to-head on another team, right? And so they're going head-to-head, and they're like, okay, who's up next? Nobody looks my way. I mean, like, nobody. It's as if I'm over here, in the corner, with a thing on my head, right? I mean, nobody. And so somebody on our team won, and then the other team won, and then it was like 2-2 or whatever, or 30-30, 40, whatever the tennis thing. I don't play tennis. Another adversity. Okay. And so we have 2 more people to go. We're potentially up. So they said, well, let's let Carla go. And, and they're not even talking to me when they discuss it, right? So it's like, what do you think? Should Carla go? I don't know. Her food is just too spicy, and I don't know. It's just not that great. I'm like, hello. You can ask me. So anyway, so they're like, okay, Carla, you go. So I go up to the judges, and I'm going up against Trey Wilcox, and he has salmon, and I have my groundnut stew, and the first judge says, I prefer the salmon, and I was just like, oh. I mean, inside I was like, oh. And then the next judge says, I like the spice. I choose Carla's dish, and I perked up, and in my head I'm just like, yes. But when the first person said I picked the salmon, you just feel that you're like, oh my gosh, they didn't pick me, and it feels like you're on that on a school ground when you want to be picked. You just want to just affirm that, my dish. And so I'm still living in that space where nobody wanted me to do this dish, right? And the stubborn side of me says, this is the dish that I want to do. Is that the authentic side? Does authenticity mean stubbornness? I don't know. At this point, I don't know in my life. Okay, so I picked this dish. So the first judge went to Trey, second one went to me, and the third person says, Carla's dish is really spicy, and I'm literally getting ready to concave in, but I'm trying to be an adult because I am the oldest one there, and including the judges, and then they're like, Carla's dish is really spicy, but I like spice. I choose Carla, and I'm like, yes. And then the next judge goes on, and basically they say, I picked Carla, and then I won, right? And I was like, yes! And I did, okay, little African thing. And so then here I am, right? And I'm on a high, and I'm on such a high, right? And then I overhear somebody say, good thing Trey overcooked his salmon. Exactly. That's exactly how I felt, right? So, I mean, this whole emotional roller coaster of, adversity, win, adversity, right? And so I'm going through this whole thing, and in my head, I'm like, oh. And I know that I wasn't supposed to hear that, but the universe still put it within my ear, so I guess I was supposed to hear it, because there are no mistakes in the universe. So our team ended up winning, and everybody was really happy, and they were running up, high-fiving me and everything, but then I heard that. So as the winning team, all of the winners went before the judges' table. And here we are, and they're talking about everybody, and then everybody's dish and how happy they were, and the food was really great. And the guest judge, Matsiano, anyway, the guest judge from Chicago, he says the winner of the person who's going to Italy and the person whose dish was full of flavor and elegant and texture and everything is, and I'm looking at everybody, and everybody's just like, they're waiting for their name to be called, and I'm like this. Let me just get this over with. One more day in Top Chef, but he was like, Carla, and I was just like, in your face, Fancy, right? I was just basically, it was like all these things that they're telling me that I'm not supposed to be, and it was like, in your face, Fancy, oh, right? And I was just like, right? And so sometimes the win exists with you and you don't realize it exists with you. But when you are true to yourself and you don't back down because of somebody's perception of what you are doing, and that has just been this resounding story in my life where I, be stubborn or not, I feel that I should stay the course, and nobody can sit in my shoes the way I can sit in them. So that's Top Chef, and I go on and on and on. And then, and then The Chew happens. The Chew happens in 2011, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I'd never hosted a show, and I mean, that's how I felt, and I'm with probably three of some of the most talented and trained people who had been on television, and it was Mario Batali, it was Michael Simon, and Clinton Kelly, and they'd all been doing television forever. And then it happened to be that the girls, myself and Daphne Oz, hadn't done television. So here we are trying to make up this time, and nobody's telling us that we need to be media trained or anything. It's just, go, be fabulous. And so all of a sudden it felt like a challenge from Top Chef. It's like that you don't feel prepared for. So I am just working so hard. And I remember a friend said to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got this job. And she said, and I kept saying to my friends, I said, why? And I was asking the universe, why did I get this job? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? And she says to me, your job is to be authentic. And at the time, my ego was like, what does that even mean? What does that even mean to the audience? Like, what am I supposed to do with that? And so she said, every day, it is just to show your authentic self, just to show your voice. And I said, okay, eventually I will know what that means. And throughout that process of trying to figure it out, it was so painful. I would go home, I would cry. Nobody knew that I was doing this. I felt like, oh my God, I can't do this. The IFB thing, where somebody is talking in your ear, I'm like, I already have voices, I don't need yours. Have you all heard me tell that story about that IFB? So when I first wore the IFB, and the, you have to trust the person with the button that has your name on it. The person who's talking to you. And so Gordon Elliott, who was the executive, he was saying, I was doing this dish, and he kept saying, oh, don't forget to put the egg in the pan. And no, he didn't even say that. He just kept saying the egg. So it's Panay, he said the egg. And not the egg. He just kept saying the egg. And I'm like, he said the egg, so I said out loud, the egg. But so you don't hear it, but he's saying the egg in my ear, and I say the egg. And so Michael Simon saw what was happening because I kept just saying the egg. The egg. So you all don't know that I'm hearing the egg in my ear. I mean, I'm like, can I buy a word? Put egg. Egg in pan. Cook egg. But I'm not getting that. Adversity. I'm not getting that. I need a little more information. Sometimes you don't have enough information. The universe just gives you a syllable of a word. It's like, give me another word, universe. Give me another word. And so Michael Simon is laughing, and he was like, he cracks an egg and puts it in the pan. I'm like, oh, egg! Right? It was all so new to me. And I'm going through this, and one day, in working hard, and honestly, I would go home, and I just was so out of my depth. And I was like, universe, why am I here? Because I feel so uncomfortable. I can't afford New York. I was in a furnished apartment, and I was afraid to buy anything because I said, if I have to move from this city, I need to move in 60 minutes or less. I mean, seriously. And so by the time I ended up moving from that apartment, it cost me $75. I kid you not. It was like $75 because I knew I needed to get it done. I mean, all my belongings could fit in a taxi. I was like, get on out of here. Get on out of New York, right? So one day, the EP, executive producer, Gordon Elliott, came up to me and he said, this is in between shows because we do 2 shows a day. He said, the guys are doing so much better than you and Daphne. And he said, oh, we have another show. Okay. And adversity. And so, what do I do with this? And okay, so all of that, this is happening, and I was so upset, but I was upset not because of what he told me, but because I felt insecure about what I didn't know. And the one thing that I say somebody can talk about you. If you feel pain, it is for you. If you don't feel pain or you feel indifference, it is not yours. I felt pain then. It was mine. I didn't know what I needed to know, but I didn't know how to get that information. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't have the information. And so that was at the end of season 1. At the season 2, or after season 1, Clinton Kelly said, he said to Gordon, why don't you send Daphne and Carla to a media trainer? And he's telling my boss, basically, help her get trained. And I was like, wow. And so we started going to a media trainer. I didn't even know what a media trainer was. I didn't even know that existed. And so I started to talk to her about what my frustrations were. And so she helped me along. And I said, I want to be able to read the teleprompter and be natural. But in some of the correspondence with Gordon, it was like, Carla, she's inconsistent, she mugs at the camera, she does this and that, right? And so I didn't know, I'd been doing theater. It's like, hey, but I guess not that, but maybe that wasn't what I needed to do. And so I kept working with her, and I remember they only paid for three sessions with her, like 3 hours. They gave me 3 hours to get better. And I was just like, it seems like if you're going to invest in me, I just need a little more time, just a little more. And so I ended up seeing her for about a year. And at the end of that year, she was watching my shows and she was saying to me, okay, this is great. And she's like, you really have potential. And then eventually, Gordon said, I think our girl's ready to graduate. She's great. And this was at the end of season 2. So I was feeling really, really great. And I was like, oh man, this has been so helpful. It's amazing what a little information will do to help you further along. So that was at the end of season 2. At the beginning of season 3, I get there and the first day, and Clinton Kelly got to do all of these different things outside of food. And I loved doing games, and I loved hosting, all these different things, entertaining, because I was catering. But they had all the chefs doing the cooking, and then Clinton got to do everything else. Crafts. I love crafts, too. I know, child. I like crafts. So we came back to season 3, and they were like, Carla, you get to host a game. I was like, oh my gosh, I get to host a game. So I go up there and I read through, this is at the rehearsal, I read through the scripts and, reading the teleprompter and everything, and I'm like, wow, that last year really paid off, right? And I was so excited. And then right at the end of that rehearsal for that game, they're like, oh, I'm sorry, that was supposed to be for Clinton. Dude, I was here, then I was there. I was crushed. When I tell you, all of the confidence that I felt, it was literally within 15 minutes, all of the confidence that I felt in that moment tanked. Because I didn't know what I thought I knew, or how I was being perceived from them. And so I remember I got through the rehearsal, I went up to my dressing room, and I just said, oh, it was just like big crocodile tears, child. I'd never cried so much. And I remember my friend saying, I would call her, when I would get home and after work, and I would be crying, and she said, I know you've been through a lot, but you had to go through this. This is something that you had to go through, and you just have, and it was a big chunk in season 2, and this was just a little bit, and she said, you just have a little more to go. And if she hadn't told me that, if she hadn't seen the light at the end of my tunnel, and I told her recently, like about 2 weeks ago, I said, I couldn't have done it. I think I would have quit. I think I would have said, I can't do this anymore. I'm not getting better. Obviously, I'm not over it. But obviously I got over it. But anyway, so, and she said, it's just a little bit more. And I knew that it was all for me, and it was so painful. And then, season 5, and I was doing all this other stuff and everything, and I just want to go back to the game. Season 5, last show of season 5, they said, Carly, you're hosting a game. And then I was like, okay, a little gunshot. I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe it's not me, maybe it's really Clinton. And right, and then actually in the show, I went through it, I hosted the game, and then afterwards, I'm leaning over like this because these tears are just dropping out of my eyes. And they were like, what's happening? Well, what? I remember Daphne came up to me. She was like, why are you crying? I was like, because you don't know, because in season 3, first episode, and this is season 5, last episode, right? And I've been carrying this thing, and just the memory of it, right? And the fact that they let me do it, and they were like, oh, that was great. And it was just so charged. But sometimes in adversity, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know how much you need to know. And so often, the lesson was mine to have. And I can be mad at the executive producer, I can be mad at whomever, but the thing is, when they say don't shoot the messenger, your lessons come in messengers. They come from other people. And if you feel some kind of way about it, it is yours to have. And the easiest way to do it is just to grow through it. That is the easiest way. So that was that. That was season 5. Fast forward, all this time, throughout the years, they were saying, who do you want to interview? And I said, I would love to interview Carol Burnett. They would just ask us, not even interview, but like, who would you like to see come to the show? And I said, Carol Burnett. And Michael Simon was like, really? Not even Oprah? You just want to see Carol Burnett? I mean, what black girl? He said, you really are blackish. I mean, what black girl wants to see Carol Burnett? I was like, I grew up doing theater. Carol Burnett, Lucille Ball, women, their own show, producing. I said, that's who, is my dream guest. And so, fast forward, they season 7, the last season, they said Carol Burnett's coming. They told me in January to prepare for, I think it was like April or early May. And I was like, oh my God, really? And I started crying. And I started crying because a couple months before, I went to an event that ABC was hosting, and this is definitely not adversity, but I found out for the Paley Awards that Carol Burnett was going to be there. But I found out in the car, because, you go to all these events, you're like, okay, I'm just going to go, and you don't know who's going to be there. And then they were honoring Carol Burnett. And I found out in the taxi, and I was like, wait, what? Carol Burnett? She's going to be there? Oh, my God. I started crying. I was like, oh, my God, Carol Burnett, I can't believe it. So I get there, and I'm on the red carpet, and they're interviewing me. They're like, who would you like to see most? I'm like, Carol Burnett. I mean, I did theater as a kid, and she was my hero. And they were like, oh, she's right behind you. I turned around, and I was like, I mean, the floodgate. And it was kind of an ugly cry, too, because the girl is all like, oh, my God, it's Carol Burnett. And she's like, unstable. But I didn't care. Mama, remember how I used to love Carol Burnett, right? Oh, my God, love some Carol Burnett. So I'm there, and I'm crying. I finally get off the red carpet. I'm getting myself together, and I look across the way, and there's somebody, Wendy McClendon Covey, from that show. What's the show?